Okay, so just looking at how to do a basic drop down like this. So this is one I made before just to try and show you. So in that drop down stage, you could link these text items to other pages. So if you want to have a go at this, I'll start from scratch and just do a complete demo on it. So you need to create your menu item. So just some kind of button shape. I'll just give it a fill. And then you need some kind of object like a little triangle will do, something to indicate that you're going to drop it down. And so then let's call it like I did in the demo shop. Make that white so it shows up. Enlarge it, and that will do. So once we've got the top menu items sorted out, whatever that's going to look like, you need to take that whole object and group it, and then you need to make it a component. So you get that green thing going on there. And the next thing you've got to do is construct your drop down. So I'll just do a quick one. And give it a softer colour. So something like that, and possibly no border. So it's just really soft. So it's sitting there. Now the deal is, so with this, is you've got to create two different states. So at the moment, if you look at the component, it gets that default state, but then you need that drop down state. So let's just say new state. You've got to create that, and this would be your drop down menu. Okay, so but this object that's going to drop down needs to end up pasted inside the component. So you can see how the rectangle in the layers, if we're looking here, the rectangle's not inside that component and not on the right state. So inside the component, but making sure you're in the drop-down menu state, you need to get that rectangle and get it pasted inside here. So I'm going to paste it by clicking on this rectangle, I'll paste it in, and now I'll rename it so I know what it is. And now it should be sitting inside the component but on the drop-down state. So we end up with a default state where it's not, but when you are on the new state, you've gone in, you've clicked inside the layers and selected one of those layers, and then Command V pasted your drop-down menu in there. So it's got to be inside the components layers. If it's an object you've drawn and it's sitting outside the components layers, it's not going to work for you. So just understanding you've got these two, if you just toggle, you'll understand you've got it working. See, that's working. Now all we have to do is start to animate it. So in the default state, we've now got to go to, so we've got to be on the default state, and then we can go switch to prototype, click on our, double click to get into the actual little arrow. And now when I click on it, I get the option over here to choose a state. I want to go to my drop-down menu state. That's what I want it to do. So let's just play that. And there you can see, but I've got to get back. I've got to be able to close it again. So then I've got to think to myself, I've got to go back to design and make sure I select a component, and this time I want to be down on the drop-down menu. Okay, so something's got to happen in prototype when I've got it open. Now I can see it because I went back to design and selected the drop-down, and now I can animate that back to the default state. So it's animating to and from the open and default state. And now when I play it, I can close and open that drop-down menu. And then you can start to activate. If you have text obviously sitting there, you can activate that as a link to other particular pages. So I'll stop that there. And obviously the hover thing is really simple as well. And they've even put a hover. I'll just start from scratch as usual. Let's just go for the hover state. Again, have some sort of menu or text or something happening. It can be a word, it can be an object, it doesn't really matter. But we want to change. So you've got to think that that's got to be a component, because we can't animate anything if it's not a component. So you make a component. So there it is, and the component has a default state, which is what we're on, but it also has a hover state. So once you're on the hover state, you can make a change in the hover state. So it might be just changing the fill. And just check that it's doing its thing. So default and hover. And when I play that, I should just see it hovering. Now, off and on, it'll hover. So that's it. That's basically it. If you want to add any more sophisticated animation once you've created those basic states, that's when you've got to select each state, then go to prototype, and then you can start playing around with how extra behaviors if you want to add them onto it. So you've got various transitions. Auto animate's pretty good. Most of the time you can just use that. But just getting used to the idea that when you're in design mode is when you select the different state. And then if you want to, so you've got to do the selecting of the different states while you're in design mode. And then you've got to switch to prototype mode to then affect that state and how it might be animating. So if I wanted to make sure that animates back to this default state, I can do that. So now it's just going backwards again. So it goes back to default state again. So I've just added a little bit of extra to it. Okay, so I will stop there. I think that's probably enough. So